The Australian government's response to the Uluru statement was a kick in the guts to the Indigenous leaders who created it and another lost opportunity for the Prime Minister to show a spark of visionary leadership. But what the latest Essential Report figures show is that the reaction of the government was not an accurate reflection of the broader community's attitudes to the proposals in Uluru. I've written before in this column about how the Australian public is ahead of the government when it comes to thinking about marriage equality and renewables. We can now add the Uluru statement to the list. On the proposal to have a constitutionally enshrined Indigenous voice in Parliament, 45% of those surveyed agreed with the idea, with only 9% strongly opposing. Interestingly, a significant 28% were undecided about the idea and, in theory, they're to be convinced. While the current 45% in support falls short of the constitutional requirements for change, the 28% undecided should be seen as an opportunity for a strong leader to persuade. It's a question of will, lack thereof, and skill ditto. But it's galling for the government to point the finger at the public, saying they aren't receptive to this idea or that it is somehow radical. On the idea of a treaty between the government and Indigenous peoples, the results are similar, with 47% in support, 8% strongly opposed and 28% undecided. Support for a treaty is actually up from June this year. Even the idea of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission attracts similar levels of support. I always approach public opinion research on Indigenous issues with trepidation for a variety of reasons. Unlike other issues, cost of living or problems with the NBN or the healthcare system, non-Indigenous Australians' contact with an understanding of Indigenous communities is minimal, shallow, mostly framed by the media, and can be overtly or casually racist. In the qualitative research I've done over the last decade, I have watched as non-Indigenous Australians struggle to understand and incorporate the experience of Indigenous Australians into their worldview or their ideas of national identity and history. When issues around racism, multiculturalism or diversity are raised in discussion groups, those related to Indigenous Australians are often ignored. And so presenting non-Indigenous Australians with questions about something like the Uluru Statement may well reflect this ignorance and prejudice. It's a good sign then that close to 50% of Australians are supportive of Uluru and around 25% at least undecided. This is not virtue signalling, by the way. There is no focus group moderator or phone pollster to signal to. At some level, the attitudes of non-Indigenous Australians to the Uluru Statement should determine the outcome of that statement. While the broader public view isn't irrelevant, it should override the vision of the Indigenous community about its future and the pathway towards it. And yet it is important, especially when politicians use the community to defend their decision to reject Uluru, to show with accuracy where the broader community actually sits. Supportive and open to persuasion about the contents of Uluru, which, if implemented, would benefit us all. Rebecca Huntley is the Director of Research at Essential Media.